Welcome to the second episode of CarePoints. Today, we're going to continue our conversations with folks in the industry and my collaborators at Lone Star Communications. And our topic for today is low-code, no-code application development and how that is transforming the way Lone Star, who's typically known as a systems integration company, is beginning to operate in the new world. And our guests today are Brian Banks and Cliff Switzer. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves to you, and then we'll have a conversation. You can learn all about what they do at Lone Star. Brian, to you.
Hello, my name is Brian Banks. I've been with Lone Star Communications for 17 years. Started out in customer service, and I worked my way up into research and development. So I am currently an integration specialist in research and development.
And Cliff Switzer, 27 years in the industry. Started with Halco when we had 5 employees, and we grew into 5% market share to 65% market share. And then we joined Lone Star, and I'm an innovation specialist. So I get to talk to hospitals and figure out what technology they're purchasing and have fun integrating it to our systems.
So you guys have been working on some very, very interesting different things over the last couple of years, and you've had an opportunity to collaborate in a way that maybe you didn't in the past. And on the surface, you guys are a bit of an odd couple. So Brian is in the Dallas area, Cliff is in Houston. Brian's an engineer. Cliff works more on the customer-facing side. How did you guys come together? Why don't I start with you, Cliff?
That's an interesting story. We've worked together for years, right? I mean, in the same company, but me and Brian never actually met. So we were invited to join a innovation group. It had no name. They handpicked basically the guys that think outside the box and said, hey, we're going to start this R&D group, and we're going to basically look for things in the industry that could disrupt us, or look for things that we could use to disrupt the industry. So Justin and Ray and leadership invited us to this meeting. We had no idea what we were going to do. And the first thing we came up with is we need a name. So Justin said, well, what about the DOD? And we're like, what's that? He's like, well, the Division of Disruption. And that's what stuck with us at the beginning. And that's how I met Brian. That's where the story starts. And I'll let Brian kind of continue on that story.
Yes, in those initial meetings, we were asked, what possibly do we think could be a disruption in the industry, or how could we possibly be a disruption in the industry? And one of the first things we landed on was, empowering our own team with inside, we could be the disruption. I like being a disruptor, so I thought, hey, by giving our technicians the knowledge in their hands, we could possibly be a disruption in the industry. So we landed up on an idea of a knowledge-based library. And then we began exploring, well, what ideas could we utilize to actually create that environment? And I had previously, I developed apps and websites, and Cliff actually brought up an environment which he classified at the time was a no-code environment. And that was my introduction into the no-code environment. I traditionally develop apps the old way, utilizing Xcode or Swift. And so I was a little bit concerned, of how long this could take place in developing this. And so I'll let Cliff explain the whole environment.
Yeah. Why low code, no code, and is it really any worse than conventional stuff? Is it better? What interested you in this, and how are we taking advantage of it?
Yeah, about 2 years ago, I was playing around with a lot of data analytics and a lot of stuff with customer facing situations, and I was like, man, there's got to be a way that you can build modern apps, without Swift, without React, and prototype things, so customers can actually you can get feedback faster rather than have to spend the kind of money you have to spend to develop an app. So we tried. I was playing around with Adello, with Bubble, a little bit of Flutter, and then I kind of landed on a different company, and then I met Brian. Brian was already working in some app development using, I believe, WordPress and some other tools, and it was kind of just a perfect match. At first, Brian was like, "There's no way we can build an app like this in no code," um, and then once I showed him what could be done, I think it took us a week, and we had a prototype built for the next DoD meeting. And then Justin and them were like, "What did y'all just make?" You know, the first prototype, he was like, "This is incredible." And then it kind of went from there. A lot of nights and weekends, working on Techstar and just throwing ideas in there, and it just slowly grew over time.
So the internal knowledge base for the technicians is Techstars. So that's actually started to have a real life. So, once you got past your proof of concept, you found out that there was a pretty significant demand for it.
Yes, we kind of took things from that and said, well, this needs to be forward facing to the technician. They need the entire parts catalog. They need, installation manuals, wiring diagrams, all that stuff. It's almost like Customer Connect inside an app rather than logging into a website. You've got a technician on a ladder. They're not going to stop what they're doing to get off the ladder, go log into a laptop. Hopefully their password's right. You're trying to onboard new technicians, and you got to ask Rollin to get them in. It's a lot easier when you control your own app. Then after that, all these other ideas start popping up. Let's share contact lists. Let's share site information. Let's, especially when onboarding new techs. Now everything's in one place. They're all using their personal cell phone, so it doesn't make any sense for them to all grab a phone directory and start entering everyone's phone number in when everything's could be in one app. So it was just a lot of little ideas that just started snowballing and growing.
So what's interesting is Brian is more specifically part of conventional IT, where you're not, but you're in a unique position because you have a very significant customer-facing relationship. So the two of you together represent important, bigger parts of a larger machine, if you will. Brian, one of the knocks on low code, no code is that there's dangers of having citizen developers. So we'll put Cliff in the citizen developer category. Are we at a point where we are where that doesn't really matter anymore, where this is actually kind of a bona fide IT project, right? Even though you're not using C#.
Right. No, moving forward, I really think it's something that a lot of people from a company and from an individual may find benefit in this. And what I mean by that is being able to, one, identify what your need, what are you really trying to create? What problem are you really trying to solve? And when you can create something, if you look at the numbers of how much time people spend on their cell phones, and you can actually literally meet a need by providing them some interaction and information in the form of a mobile app, and you do not have to have conventional coding backgrounds in Python or any of the native languages that was originally for mobile app development. And it doesn't require an entire team of developers, from a user interface guy, from an integrations guy, from Cliff and I, but like you mentioned, are from two different worlds, in regards to development and sales. But this low code environment actually was a great meeting ground for us to actually bring two talents and in the form of actually addressing a need rather quickly. And that's what I was mostly impressed about, is how well and how quickly we could create something that actually met a need. We knew, both of us having technician backgrounds, we knew almost upfront what some of the needs were. And so when we started developing this, we designed it specific to those needs. And we gave the technicians the ability to interact by saying, what more could we provide within this? So it became a technicians app. Cliff and I started something, but in truth, it was really the technicians in the field that developed it because they provided ideas that we could actually quickly create. Cliff has a full-time job at Lone Star, and so do I. But we were still able to create something rather quickly. And I think that that's the attraction to a lot of this, in this era of where, like you mentioned, citizen developers, you may find people that may create personal apps that they only develop for themselves. You may find that companies who don't have the resources utilizing this because they have creative people on their teams that don't have the formal background in coding. So I think it's an interesting time right now.
And what ends up happening, like you described with the technicians, is that people see what can be done and it stimulates their own creativity in terms of what's possible. So I saw what you guys were doing, and I was in the midst of doing some prototype work for a mobile application for our Alero platform. And I recognized that there was a match here, that we needed to reuse some of your process to get something enough out there so that we could get feedback from other folks on the sales and marketing team, from customers, from other partners, and giving something to somebody that is actually tangible, that looks and feels like the real thing, is an incredible thing.
If you like, your question was citizen developers, so it's like they are the consumer. So who better to build for than the person that's consuming the actual app? So if you flip that, the same thing applies in the clinical arena. Who better to build for than directly for the clinician? They're telling you what they want, and you're getting direct feedback. So it's you're building to a need rather than building to what you think a need is. So it's you're closer to the problem.
And what's interesting for us, integrators are problem solvers, and companies like Lone Star are in the problem solving business. But we tend to not look at our work as product per se, that one customer's problem may be different than the others. But the interesting thing about our position as listeners, we're so much closer on the ground to the customers than, say, a major manufacturer might be. So our ability to listen and then to make that actionable by putting things in front of people that we can get their direct feedback on and not have to wait 18 months to see that from a product pipeline perspective. How much have you seen that in generalized in the industry? That a customer needs X, Y, or Z. You're reliant on somebody else to provide that, and you have to wait, and it's out of your control. But in this case, this is completely under our control. So all great answers. What's next for you guys?
Well, I will tell you, one of the things that's exciting to me is ChatGPT and AI. With the integration, again, even in this low code, no code environment, these environments are developing rapidly. I mean, rapidly. And the tools and the integrations that they're actually providing, AI being one of them, is super exciting because, again, Techstar was designed to give the technician the ability to look at a PDF rather quickly, or a drawing rather quickly, or information rather quickly. Now with the integration of AI, it's not simply trying to read a PDF on your mobile phone. You can just simply ask your phone, specific questions, and it will return an answer rather quickly. And again, when you're standing in front of an engineer or a contractor at a site, it just gives that customer relationship a whole totally different, another look, and a confidence level that we can actually, if we don't have the answer, we can go get the answer for you rather quickly. So I'm super excited about the whole AI involvement and being able to actually have an interaction with ChatGPT in that conversational piece of actually being able to ask it questions and it provides an answer without having to go and search for that information within a PDF.
Yes. And trained only on that specific topic. So if you ask it a question outside that trained library, it will tell you that it doesn't know that answer, and that it's not trained on that data. So it's if you ask it where to get the best hamburger, it's not going to answer your question. It's only trained on the data set that Brian and I trained the AI on, which makes it even cooler. That just unlocks a lot of really creative doors.
So hats off to the leadership at Lone Star for kind of setting you guys loose, and hats off to you guys for recognizing the opportunity to take what you guys know so well, which are the customers and even niche customers like technicians, and to provide some tools. Let's finish up. Brian, anything to add before we close?
Hats off to you, Kenny, for reaching out to us and seeing the possibilities that we could create something rather quickly and it be a close, as close as we could get it to what you had envisioned. A lot of times, people will not even venture out to even try that. But again, being a part of leadership, we really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to actually display what could actually be created. And I think more and more people will see that.
And as we've kind of talked through this, and we've talked before about this, the dividing lines between what's real programming and what's citizen programming, maybe they really don't matter.
Right.
You look at ChatGPT in the last 3 months and where it started and where it is now. You can look at OpenAI DALL-E. You can look at Midjourney. You can look at Stable Diffusion. Those are all image modeling AIs, and you can pretty much type in, draw me a frog on a bike. And when they first came out, it was very rudimentary, but the stuff that it's kicking out now in the last 2 months is absolutely amazing. And there's companies out there that you can literally text and create an entire website for you. So the question kind of goes, okay, there's a lot of people that made websites too, but now you can go on Squarespace or Wix, and there's all these AI tools that will literally build whatever it is that you want. The trick is the creativity and figuring out how to create a brand around it, and the marketing. The tools are there. You just have to be a lifelong learner, and that's kind of what me and Brian are. We, after 4 o'clock, we're learning. We're looking up new tech. We're trying to figure out how to plug things in, and that's what we do. Weekends, nights.
Right. The lifelong learning thing is culturally to work for a company that is encouraging you to do that. So if you think of this sort of DOD, the Department of Disruption, well, in many respects, it's really not disruption, right? Because disruption may have a negative connotation. I think it's almost like the Department of Challenge, right? So, whereby there aren't barriers, and we don't have to think about things the old way. And thematically for our conversation today, I want the world to know, Lone Star is not just a systems integration company who puts stuff into that's behind the scenes, that we're a company that interacts directly with our customers, and that we're being very forward about using the tools that are available to us to just do so much more. So Thank you both very, very much for joining me today. And we look forward to having other conversations, and, maybe sometime later in the year, we can come back and look at some of the newer things that you guys are working on.
Love to.
Love to.
And to the audience, we encourage you to hit the like button and subscribe to the Lone Star Communications YouTube channel. And we look forward to future podcasts with some interesting guests. Thanks for having us. Have a great day.